So our last panelist today is Jacob Brady with Arcadis. Jacob is a lead software developer with experience architecting software systems in the ITS, transportation, and work zone technology realm. Jacob manages their work on work zone software products, which was designed for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation and is now also used by the Florida Department of Transportation District 4. Jacob served as the co-chair for the Work Zone Data Exchange Specification Update Subgroup for over 2 years and was the primary implementer and reviewer of updates to the Work Zone Data Exchange Specification for the past 4 specification releases. So Jacob, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Mike. Hello, everyone. We can go on to the next slide. I'm just going to talk about the work that we've done with MassDOT and the software systems in place to support taking in the work zone data and the device data and combining those and putting out data for public and third parties. So starting with some of the background on how we started getting into work zone data with MassDOT. So the original goal was that MassDOT has had smart work zone requirements in place for a long time, before 2017. When we started working with them to develop software to support them. And the limitations were that they had to use vendor-specific software to see those devices and got data in different formats from different vendors, and then didn't have a way to aggregate that data for reporting or a way to see all of the data at once or share that. So that led to going through the systems engineering process and creating a software platform called Workzone Manager, now one of Arcadis's software products, which was built for MassDOT to do that, to integrate with different vendor systems and provide a centralized store of the data for work zones. So throughout that development process, we learned about Workzone Data Exchange when it was still in version 1, and then got involved in that. Me and Michelle Boucher at MassDOT and Neil Boudreau at MassDOT, who has put a lot of effort into this work that we've done and on the WZDx in general, as Mike mentioned earlier. And so the Workzone Manager software evolved alongside the Workzone Data Exchange specification to basically all the data concepts about how to represent a work zone and the language you use around like the fields that storing a work zone and how you represent a large work zone with multiple distinct linear segments and that kind of thing that the Workzone Data Exchange defined, we integrated into the application. So then we came to have this at MassDOT, the Workzone Manager software, which was based on Workzone Data Exchange and could put out Workzone Data Exchange. And you can go to the next slide. So a lot of the stuff that we've done has been similar to what Skylar was saying that Iowa did with getting smart device data, combining it with planned data, and then using that to put out a WZDx feed that has higher quality information, verified locations, and verified to be occurring at that time. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about sort of the software behind that and the data flow of the software. So the software that does that at MassDOT, and parts of it are also used in Florida District 4 and in Wisconsin, piece of the software, though not the whole flow that MassDOT uses. So it's a web-based application that has a mobile-friendly user interface, and it allows configuring, managing, and monitoring work zones throughout the state. So those come in from different sources, and you can also enter them directly. And so through that process, we get the work zone planned event data into the system. You can also see the field devices. So it integrates with all the device types defined in the WZDx device feed. So it's really simple. It means that if you have a vendor producing a device feed, you just configure the URL in the software, and then you can see all of the devices. So like in that screenshot, you can see there's a camera and a message sign. And there's also error boards, of course, and location markers and others. And so from one perspective, you have the viewing of all this data in a centralized place and storing of all the data in a consistent format for historical reporting. And so then you can also do reporting, run reports from historical data or about events that are upcoming to like create graphs and PDFs to share and help with planning. And so the software right now in MassDOT gets a lot of its data from another MassDOT system, which also provides data to Mass 511, which is like sort of a notifications platform that the events in that get entered through the DOT operators. And so I'll talk more about that in a bit, but that's where a lot of the planned event data comes from. But there's another way that that can happen in Workzone Manager, and this is the direction that MassDOT is working towards now, which is the Workzone Manager has a lane closure request system functionality where like either contractors or DOT staff, like resident engineers, can request via the system to do road work in a certain area. Say we're planning to do this here, we want to do it at this time and have this impact, and then other DOT staff would be assigned as reviewers and go through a review and approval process. So in that way, then all the work that is going to be happening in Massachusetts goes in through this system rather than relying on operators to enter something based on like maybe some other process that happened before the data got to the operators. And also leads to more consistent data with it all being entered according to WZDx, like from the terms used from the point it was entered, and also higher quality data because of the restrictions imposed by the entry form. And so then the last feature that's provided is the combination of the planned events with the real-time device data to do things just like I was doing about verifying the location or verifying the active status. So go to the next slide, please. So this is a diagram on the data flow with the inputs on the left and then the Workzone Manager software system, all its components just broadly, and then what goes out. So for the 3 inputs to the system, there's manual entry using the web app. That could be through your phone if a contractor doing it. That's not the workflow that's in place in MassDOT right now, but it's supported by the software. Or it could be operators knowing that there's work there because they got notice of it a different way and just entering it manually in the system. Or it could be in this, again, this is where it's going at MassDOT, the lane closure requests, which are also entered via the UI, and then go through that approval process before becoming approved planned work, which would then be treated like events coming from other sources like MassDOT's notification system. So the second data source is the Workzone vendor systems like Icon and Vermac. The Workzone Manager collects data from those via the WZDx device feed. So that's the field device data getting in. And then the last source is just any other Workzone data sources that the agency has in MassDOT. That's their notification system where the stuff gets entered by operators. But this could be like a different lane closure system that then Workzone Manager integrates with to get the planned event data in. On the output side, we have the primary thing that this presentation is about, the Workzone Data Exchange Workzone feed. So that's the events in the WZDx format with verified information from combining with the field devices, and then also the Workzone Manager UI. So you can see everything about the devices and everything about the work zones, and have the option at MassDOT. They can just create read-only accounts and share those within the agency, or you can have the whole thing be public and it works sort of like a specialized 511 system, I guess, or it can send the data to 511, and MassDOT's also working on that with 511 taking in the WZDx Workzone feed. All right, next slide. So for what's remaining and what we're working on now, the first is to get more data. So unlike Iowa, which has a ton of error boards already and access to all those, MassDOT doesn't have that much data. The only device data that they have right now is from very large projects, which there's only a couple active at a time, and then various other devices that just show up randomly, like Ross was saying, because they're not associated with like larger projects. So having the specifications in MassDOT change to require projects to include connected devices is the first step. And what the first step of that sort of large step is the major projects on state roads to include, or that meet some certain criteria as well, to include the start location marker, an arrow board at the point of the closure, and an end location marker. So then you have the full bounds of the work zone and the place where the lane is actually closed. So that's in progress. The next step is to do more automation. So the biggest thing about this is we want the devices to be associated automatically with the planned events and unassociated automatically, depending on, like, at the simplest case, if it's in the planned bounds or within some range of the planned bounds and the dates match up and the device recently updated and the event's supposed to be active like about this time, then the software would automatically do this. And the software is in place for this, but we don't have enough devices. We haven't done the testing process and actually tried it out yet to see how it's working and see how many devices are actually getting to be matched. And the farthest next step of that is considering what to do when you have devices on like local roads where you don't have the planned event data. Maybe we want to look into like automatically creating like point events for those locations and saying there might be work occurring at this point. So the less stuff for the users of the system to have to do. We don't want people to and there aren't resources right now at MassDOT for somebody to be like using the system daily and seeing that this device comes online and is near the work zone and having to manually associate it. There's also problems with that, with like, if the device goes offline and then comes back, you don't necessarily know if it's the same one, and then you'd have to redo it manually. So it would be easiest if that was automated by the software. So we were getting all of the benefits of the combined data without a user having to do anything. The third thing that we hope to get out of the system is to use it to gain more knowledge for future planning and about like just statistics about the work zones. So that's regarding improving the reporting capability and improving the use of the associated device data to maybe do like, if you have these kind of devices associated, we want to like do a design for what can we report on based on these set of devices that are there. And so working on the design of those reports and then developing that in the system is another thing we're working on. And then the last thing is improving data quality. And so that can be done through a lot of means. The major one we've identified so far is about changing the place the planned events get entered so that it's not via operators, via, I guess, secondhand learning this information that then they're entering into the system, and the user interface supports like putting in stuff that doesn't make sense, like direction, how the road affecting like all 4 directions for one roadway, or just like, it could be stuff as simple as like not putting the points on a road at all. So it's like those kind of things can be improved by shifting the entry of the workzone information to be through the workzone manager, which then has more constraints over what kind of thing you can enter. And that's probably going to be done at MassDOT through having the request and approval process of the planned work be done also in the workzone manager. So those requests will get created there to start. And next slide, please. So that's it for what I wanted to cover about MassDOT's use of WZDx in the workzone manager. These are contact info for me and Neil. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it back to Mike.